And here comes Sergeant or Lieutenant or whatever, Fanning. I believe it is. Also involved in the...
And you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir,
yeah.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
Oh, sorry. This is Mr. Fanning, also involved in the Karen Reed trial, also involved in the cover-up of the murder of Sandra Birchmores. Yeah.
The record.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant John Fanning, Fanning.
And Lieutenant, where do you work?
I work for the Massachusetts State Police, assigned to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office.
How long have you been with the Massachusetts State Police?
20 years next month.
And how long have you been assigned to the District Attorney's Office?
13 years.
And how long have you been a lieutenant?
Since December of 21.
Lieutenant, I'd like to ask you some questions concerning January 6th, 2023. That day, what was your involvement into the investigation to the disappearance of Anna Walsh?
I had responded to the command post in Cohasset behind the Stop and Shop off of Route 3A.
And at some point that day, did you leave to retrieve any digital devices?
I did.
Where were you going to get those devices?
The Walsh resident at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway.
And how did you know that you were able to go to that location to get those devices?
I initially spoke to Sergeant Buchanan, and then I spoke with Attorney Tracy Minor.
When did you speak to Attorney Minor, if you remember?
It would have been just before I left to go there. I'd say sometime in the 4 p.m. hour.
And how did you contact Attorney Minor?
By phone.
And can you tell us about the conversation you had with Attorney Minor?
Yes, I introduced myself. I hadn't met her previously, so I made a brief introduction. Told her that I had spoken to Sergeant Buchanan, that he was out of pocket because he was preparing for a trip to Washington, D.C., and that I'd be handling communications while he was gone. It was a cordial conversation. She was very cooperative. I explained that she had had a previous conversation with Sergeant Buchanan and a email communication with First Assistant Len Beeland. I said, I'd like to go get those devices as soon as possible. She agreed. She said that Brian was home and that I could head over there. We also had a brief discussion about why the timeline of the Walsh oldest child, that he had stated that.
And he said this earlier. Prosecution and this fuckface, the oldest child. Reference the old. He's 6 years old. Even though he's technically the oldest of three, he's still 6 years old. Referring him to the oldest child is only to insinuate he has extra maturity. He has extra this. Oh, fuck's sake.
Anna had touched the device and fixed it for him. That was really important to us because we were trying to hone in on surveillance.
And so what did you tell Attorney Minor about that device? Is that what you said to her?
Yes, we had a conversation about the importance of narrowing down our search timeline for vehicles potentially coming to and from that residence.
Now, why did you want to go get those right now, as you just said?
Well, we were trying to find Anna Walsh. It was important that we got those devices. It was my understanding from other investigators that Anna used different devices. That was according to Brian, that Anna had utilized multiple devices. Brian had stated to investigators in previous interviews that Anna would use his phone from time to time. She had used it for Uber and Lyft. And then obviously the oldest Walsh's device was important because of this account from the oldest Walsh about Anna fixing his iPad prior to her leaving.
So you have this conversation with Attorney Minor. About how long do you think the conversation was?
5 or so minutes.
And after the conversation, where did you go?
I went to the Walsh residence.
When you arrived at the Walsh residence, who was there?
Brian Walsh.
Was anyone else home at the time?
Not that I remember. I didn't see anyone else.
And what happened when you got to the Walsh residence? What can you just tell us what's your interaction with Mr. Walsh when you got there?
Yes, I pulled in, went up to the front door, knocked. I was encountered by Mr. Walsh. We I introduced myself. I had not met him previously. He invited me in. I stepped off to the left, which would have been in the kitchen area, dining area, just to my immediate left. I said, I just spoke with Attorney Minor. Did you know that I was coming? He said, yes. I said, I'm here to retrieve these devices.
And what was his demeanor like when you were speaking with him that night on January 6th?
Very cooperative, cordial, helpful.
And so you said that you were there. What devices did you think you were going there to retrieve?
His cell phone and his son's iPad mini.
Oh. So why did Buchanan write in his report that everything was regarding every device produced in human history that was in the Walsh's household? If even Lieutenant Fanning says, I was just there for 2 devices. It's because Buchanan is full of shit and he will lie to get away with misconduct.
And so you told him that did you tell him what devices you were looking for when you arrived?
Yes.
And so what happened after you told him about the devices you were looking for?
He went off to my left, past the kitchen into kind of a living room area. There's also a desk in that area, and very quickly came back with the iPad mini that he said was his oldest son's.
And did he produce anything else besides the iPad mini at this point in time?
He gave me his cell phone.
And after you got those 2 devices, what happens?
He then said that he wanted to go find another device that his kids access. I said, okay, he thought it would be helpful. At that time, he went to my right, which was into kind of an open, I don't know how to describe it, open room where the dog cage kennel was, and there was a flight of steps that went up to another room. He went out of view that way, and shortly thereafter returned with another iPad with a cracked screen.
Somehow, I don't believe Mr. Fanning here. When he voluntarily, this is now after the fact. Oh, we have to invent something. Let's have him collect it himself and give it over voluntarily. Because I guess Mr. Fanning didn't have his body cam on him.
And did he say anything when he gave you the second iPad?
He just said, my kids use this. It might be helpful to you.
What did you say after he gave you the second iPad?
We had just confirmed the passwords. He had told me the password to his cell phone, and he confirmed the passwords on the 2 other devices, as the kids predominantly use those, and I wrote them down.
And so after you received the passwords, what happened as far as your conversation with Mr. Walsh?
I told him we're going to try to return them as soon as possible. I appreciate him cooperating, and I left the residence.
And so once you left the residence, where did you immediately go to?
My vehicle.
And when you got to your vehicle, what did you do with any of the devices?
I put the 2 iPads on my passenger seat. I had Brian Walsh's phone in my hand. I checked the password that he gave me to unlock it. It would be normal for me in most situations to put the device into airplane mode to preserve data. In this case, I don't recall putting it into airplane mode because if Anna had tried to reach out, the device wouldn't work. I also went into the text app just to see the last communication with Anna Walsh, the time, which really is just like a timestamp. It could say today, yesterday, or it would go back in time with dates. Then I relocked the phone knowing that I had the correct password and put it back on top of the 2 iPads.
And once you did that, where'd you go?
I went back to the command post.
And so when you got to the command post, Lieutenant, what did you do as far as handling who'd you give these devices to?
Trooper Connor Keefe.
Why'd you give them to Trooper Connor Keefe?
Trooper Keefe is one of our forensics examiners. So he was there waiting, and I was arranging for him to take them back to our Canton office for download.
Do you have an idea of when you gave these to Trooper Keefe?
It was immediately following coming back from the Walsh residence.
And so did you give Trooper Keefe any commands at this point in time as far as what to do with these devices?
I gave him the 3 devices kind of stacked up on top of one another with a piece of paper with the passwords. And I told him, you have consent to download the data and analyze the data of the phone from December 25th until the present. And
did you give him anything else besides those 3 devices and the piece of paper with the passwords?
Yeah,
No.
they are blaming the dad now all of a sudden.
Conversations with Attorney Minor.
I do not recall any conversation with her on the 6th.
So do you know when those devices were returned to Mr. Walsh?
The afternoon, approximately 1:30 on January 7th.
Now, later that afternoon, were any of the troopers assigned to your detective unit dispatched to the area of Swampscott?
We're talking January 7th.
January 7th, yes.
Yes, they were.
Okay. And to be clear, we're talking about Saturday, January 7th. Who was dispatched to that area of Swampscott?
At approximately 4 p.m., I dispatched Trooper Kukowski, Sergeant Panazelis, Trooper Gobranson, and Trooper Sullivan.
Where did you send Trooper Kukowski?
CVS in Swampscott.
Why did you send him to CVS in Swampscott?
Because Brian Walsh had told Trooper DeChico and Detective Schmidt that he had went there when he visited his mother.
Is any of this on camera, Mr. Fanning? Is any of this recorded, Mr. Fanning? Was any of this in any contemporaneous reports, Mr. Fanning? We will get the answer soon.
And where did you send the other 3 troopers, Gobranson, Sullivan, and Pantazelis?
Whole Foods in Swampscott.
Why did you send them to Whole Foods in Swampscott?
Because the defendant said that he had went there when he went up to his mother's residence.
And so why are you sending troopers to these locations that the defendant said he was at?
To confirm if he went there.
And so that was done, those troopers were dispatched on Saturday, January 7th at approximately what time?
Between 4 and 5 p.m.
And that time frame, when was it that you heard back from Trooper Kukowski about the CVS in Swampscott?
I'd say somewhere in the 6 to 7 p.m. range. I can't recall the exact time.
And what was it Trooper Kukowski able to confirm as far as the defendant entering the CVS in Swampscott?
He was not there.
And was Trooper Kukowski dispatched to another CVS at this point in time?
Yes.
Which one?
I don't recall exactly. And that wasn't at my direction. That was something he did on his own, which would be normal for investigators.
And did you receive knowledge from Trooper Kukowski if he had discovered the defendant on video of another CVS to confirm his timeline?
Yes, and he did not see Brian Walsh at the other CVS.
Now, going to Whole Foods, who was sent to Whole Foods?
Sergeant Panazelis and Troopers Sullivan and Gobranson.
And what were they able to discover as far as confirming the defendant's location at Whole Foods as he relayed to Trooper DeChico?
He did not go there either.
And about what time were they at Whole Foods to discover this?
Somewhere after 5 p.m. on the 7th.
Now, when were you ever notified about the contents of the devices that were given to Trooper Keith on the 6th?
Around 6 p.m. on the 7th.
And who notified you as far as the contents of any of the devices?
Trooper Nick Guarino.
And who is Trooper Guarino in your detectives unit?
He's also a forensics examiner.
These two, Guarino and Fanning, if I remember correctly, are the two people who missed 34,000 messages between Sandra Birchmore and her alleged killer. Who in those messages, it's clear that he groomed Sandra from age 13, had her virginity still as a minor, kept her as a sex toy for years until she got pregnant, and then allegedly he killed her. 34,000 messages missed by Fanning and Guarino. Why? Because the alleged killer is a cop. Do you trust them telling the truth here?
And how did he notify you?
He called me.
And what did he say when he called you?
He said, I found something in the search history. And that's interesting. I said, well, what was it? And it was numerous searches about dismembering a body, how to embalm a body, how to get rid of a body, numerous searches related to that, another search related to divorce.
And so after he notified you of that, did he communicate to you and other troopers what he had found?
Yes.
How so?
He sent an email.
And as far as analyzing the iPad Mini, what was your understanding as further analyzation of the iPad Mini at this point in time?
We were going to stop.
And what was going to be done as far as the iPad Mini after stopping?
We were going
the data we're talking about.
Yes, we had stopped, and we were going to obtain a search warrant to seize that device.
There it is, folks. The number one reason why I can definitely say these officers who testified are lying sacks of shit. Because if they have the consent they claim they have, they don't need the search warrant. They don't need to stop for the search warrant. They can just say, through a consented search, we found this. So now we want to keep the devices longer. But no, that's not what happened. They found information that was really damning towards Mr. Walsh. They didn't expect to find it. Just like Trooper Proctor was searching for nudes without a warrant. They were searching for, we need to find Anna. They searched where they didn't have consent to search. They found damning, and everything after that is an afterthought. Oh shit, we fucked up. We have to. We need a warrant. Why would you need a warrant when you claim you already had consent to downloading everything on the phone? Because you never had consent to download and search everything on the devices.
So to seize that device. Now, where did you believe the device was located on the evening of January 7th?
It was back at the home.
And so what was done as far as trying to obtain a search warrant for the home?
We started writing one on the evening of January 7th.
And was one obtained?
Yes.
When was that search warrant executed?
Between 8 and 9 a.m. on January 8th.
Now, were you there when it was executed?
I was.
So when the search warrant was executed, who was home at the Walsh residence?
Brian Walsh, his mother Diane, the 3 children, and their dog.
And after the
this cross-examination will be fire.
I did. Once we secured the scene, I called Attorney Minor and notified her that we were executing a search warrant at the Walsh residence. She told me that she was headed there and she'd be there shortly.
And how long after that did it take for her to arrive?
I'd say 15 minutes or so.
And once she arrived, what happened? Did you have any further contact with Attorney Minor?
We spoke in the driveway. I handed her a copy of the search warrant, and I told her we're searching the residence. Do you have a place for the Walsh family to go? Which she replied she did. And we arranged for her and the Walshes to leave to go to Attorney Minor's house in Scituate.
Now, after that interaction with Attorney Minor, did you have any further interaction on Sunday, January 8th with Attorney Minor?
I did.
When was that?
When we went to arrest Brian Walsh.
And where was that?
At her residence.
And what was the contact you had with Attorney Minor at this point in
time? She met us right out front. She actually came out before we got to the door. And I asked where Brian was. She said in the house. I said, we need to go talk to Brian right now. And she said, well, he's not going to say anything. I said, that's fine, but we need to find him right away. We walked right in. Dining room was right off to the left. Brian Walsh was standing there, and we placed him under arrest.
Now, Lieutenant, understanding you had the opportunity to have your communications with Trooper Guarino on the evening of Saturday, January 7th. Had you not had the conversations for Trooper Guarino on Saturday, January 7th, what would the State Police Detective Unit been doing to obtain a search warrant for the residence of Mr. Walsh that evening?
Had I not had that conversation with Trooper Garino?
Yes.
At that point, the information came all at the same time, I would say, but the issue that we were having is regardless of the search history, we were still misled by Brian Walsh. And the information that he gave us, we spent time and resources going up to confirm his information. I think had we not known that information of the searches, we still would have written a search warrant for the house, less physiological fluid and instruments of the crime.
What information did you have as far as ransom emails at this point in time?
We had received an email, it was on the morning of the 7th, meaning we Cohasset Police, from a Richard Walker requesting a ransom. And that stating basically that he had Anna Walsh and was requesting a certain amount of money for her to be returned.
And where was the last place Anna Walsh had been seen prior to her disappearance, to your knowledge, on the evening of January 7th?
Inside the home on January 1st.
Your Honor, may I have a moment?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Oh, normal speed. I want to hear this in normal speed, the cross-examination.
Lieutenant, have you reviewed the transcripts of the interviews of Mr. Walsh conducted by Cohasset Police and Massachusetts State Police on January 4th, January 5th, January 7th?
I would say I've, not directly the transcripts, but I have some understanding of them, sir.
So when you testified here just moments ago that Mr. Walsh, Brian Walsh, told one or more of those people that Anna Walsh had used his phone to contact Lyft or Uber. You remember saying that?
Yes. Yes.
Where is that? Where is that in the interviews that I just described of Mr. Walsh?
I do believe I read it. I could be wrong for sure, but I do believe I read it. But I feel like that communicate, at least some type of communication was given to me at that time.
Oh, you lying sack of shit. You weren't prepared for that question, were you? You thought, hey, that's common knowledge. But as it seems, according to the defense, that information isn't in the transcript. So where did you hear it?
Well, was it a communication? But you're not suggesting it was a communication given to you by Mr. Brian Walsh. You're saying a communication by one of your colleagues or somebody. You're not sure.
Correct. And it could have been one of the child's devices. I'm not sure how he testified previously if I specifically just said Brian's phone. But that is what I remember.
And when you testify that based on your conclusion or opinion that Mr. Walsh had misled people with regards to where he was, you're relying on what another trooper reported to you based on his review of what?
Video surveillance and also items that he stated he purchased, they had asked about.
And have you looked at those, whatever you're referring to, the videos of, say, CVS and Whole Foods?
No.
And did you, before you relied on that information, did you talk to anybody at CVS or Whole Foods to discuss how their cameras are situated, what they view, what they don't view? Did you conduct anything like that?
Not personally, no.
And you are aware of the fact, aren't you, Lieutenant, that when Mr. Walsh was being asked questions about where he went and where he had been on certain days, that he was being asked those questions at his home, and there was distractions going on during those interviews. You're aware of that, correct?
I wasn't there.
Are you aware of the fact that on the recordings you could hear a dog barking repeatedly?
I didn't hear the recordings, but that would make sense.
And are you aware of the fact that Mr. Walsh specifically told the troopers when he was being, I'm sorry, strike that. Are you aware of the fact that when he was being asked questions on January 4th, he was actually talking and telling them that he was tired and hadn't had sleep and words to that effect?
No.
And in your experience as a state trooper investigating crimes, it's fair to say, isn't it, that when someone is being asked questions about a missing spouse, let's say, the mother of their children, they can be under some stress, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, you also told us that you were the one that went out and retrieved devices on January 6th of 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
And back in January 6th of 2023, you didn't write in a report about that, did you?
I did not.
And then you told us on direct examination today that you remember having a conversation with Attorney Tracy Minor on January 6th, correct?
Yes,
And you didn't write a report about that.
correct.
And
Here we go again. No reports written at the time, because why do that? Because that can be used against when it's time to testify about it. So why write a report contemporaneous with the information? Well, I'll tell you why. Because then you can change what happened. You can write a report years later and make new statements that fit better with evidence or subjects of the sorts. Why have a paper trail when you can sit on the stand and lie?
what you've done in the last week or so is you've written reports regarding those interactions, correct?
Yes, sir.
Over 2 years later is when this asswipe, this mucus from an infected pig's ass crack, over 2 years later, this is when he chooses to write down his reports. That alone should throw every fucking case out. When did you write the report about that interview? Oh, last week. Yeah, but the interview was 2.5 years ago. Yeah. All right, case dismissed. Fuck off. Jesus Christ.
One of the reports that you just wrote a couple of weeks ago, if not a week ago, you dated that the report date is January 6th of 2023, correct?
Yes, when it happened.
No. The title of your report is Interview 2023-112-4-116, report date 01/06/2023.
He backdated a report he wrote a week ago. Folks, on the few occasions a counterpart, when I'm involved in a case, the few occasions people try to present to me a backdated report or backdated anything, I ruin them. I have made companies go bankrupt because of backdated information. If that fucker had tried to do that against me in one of my cases, I own his house. or my client would have owned this fucker's house. You do not backdate anything. It's, yeah, as Nikki says, it's illegal, kind of illegal in most cases for legal docs to backdate. Yeah. It makes the entire report false. If I were to present a backdated anything in one of my cases, I would be homeless, and I should be homeless. You don't backdate it, it's fraud. Let's see what his excuse for this is.
Correct.
When you enter those dates on these Massachusetts State Police reports in that particular space, that is supposed to indicate the date the report was written.
It is. I think it's a bit confusing. Sometimes it's the date I'm writing the report. Sometimes it's a newer system that we just had switched over to in the last few years. Sometimes it's the day I write it. Sometimes it's the date of the actual report.
So here's an interesting confession. You're a moron who sometimes you write the date you write the report, sometimes you write the date of the end. You fucker. Absolute fucktwat.
Well, in fact,
But I usually reflect it in my first sentence, the actual time of the event.
like I just said, you've written no less than 3 reports in the last week or so, reciting what you testified.
Yes.
And in 2 of the reports, you put report date, May 7th, 2025, right?
Right.
And in the other report, you put the date of May 15th, 2025.
Correct.
So whether the system changed over the years, the fact is the system has been the same since you started drafting these reports years later about what you recall happened and didn't happen back on January 6th, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things you just told us that when you went.
This fucker thought that if he dates 2 reports correctly as an afterthought, they won't notice that I backdated this one. And they did. They did notice.
To the house on January 6th, that at some point Mr. Walsh then went up and got another iPad, a second iPad, correct?
Yes.
And you told us today on direct examination that he said something to the effect of, my son uses this, maybe it'll be helpful, correct?
Yes.
In the report that you just wrote in the last week or so, you didn't include anything in such a statement, did you?
I'm not sure.
You absolute moron. You're so bad at lying that you don't remember what you put in a report a week ago.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Can I just see which one you're referring to?
Yeah, folks, in this case, it's if the evidence shows that Mr. Marsh did something absolutely horrific towards his wife, he should be in prison unless these motherfuckers decided, hey, let's break all the rules. Let's just fuck the Constitution, piss on the Bill of Rights, just go full communist whore on this, and let's just wing it and hope for the best. That conduct is what puts criminals on the street. Another thing that puts criminals on the street are false confessions. When you convict the wrong person and the actual killer is still loose, as in the Zachariah Anderson case, as in the Delphi case, as with many other cases.
Okay. just going to show you your report that just ask your questions about. It's has a date on it, January 6th. In fact, you want page 2.
No, this is good, sir. Got it.
That's the report where you talk about going to the house and Mr. Walsh retrieving the second item, correct?
Yes,
And nowhere in that report does it say anything about him telling you, my son used this, or words to that effect, or maybe it'll be helpful.
correct.
And it is fair to say, isn't it, that when you went over to the house to pick up the devices, you had been told that you were to pick up 2 devices, correct?
Yes,
One cell phone and one iPad.
yes,
And that was pursuant to the agreement that was reached between Assistant District Attorney Lynn Beelan and Attorney Tracy Mine, correct?
about 2 devices.
Yes.
I was told to get 2 devices. I'm not sure if the agreement, as I had read it, specifically stated 2 devices.
When you say that agreement, what are you referring to specifically? A written agreement?
The email.
Okay.
Between Attorney Minor and Attorney Beeland.
So as you sit here today, you don't even have a recollection of whether that email that's referred to as the agreement only references Brian Walsh's cell phone and the iPad belonging to the 6-year-old.
Here's the thing, folks. If the agreement says only these 2 devices, it doesn't matter what Mr. Walsh comes down with. Sorry, I don't have that in the agreement. I can't accept that. That is what he should have said. But he didn't. He just, give me, so I can misconduct. Blah.
As I remember, correct. As I remember it, we talked about what data was going to be extracted and what time frame.
No, but I'm asking you specifically about the devices you had been told to go pick up. You were told to go pick up 1 cell phone and 1 iPad.
That was my communication, yes.
And you got that communication from Sergeant Buchanan.
Sergeant Buchanan, yes, sir.
You didn't talk to Assistant District Attorney Lynn Beelan, did you? Regarding the agreement and what you were to pick up.
I do not recall specifically, but she was at the command post that night. I just don't recall a specific conversation with her about it.
And when you talked to Attorney Tracy Miner on January 6th, before you retrieved the items, you didn't talk to her about picking up extra items or anything of the sort. You just were talking about 1 cell phone and 1 iPad.
Correct.
And it's fair to say, isn't it, that the state of the knowledge of the investigation that you possessed on January 7th of 2023, you had no information whatsoever that the iPad that was purportedly belonging to the 6-year-old had been used in any way to go from one location to another or anything like that, correct?
Just give me a second. I'm trying to process the question here.
You didn't have any information about that second iPad being involved in the locations of either Mr. Walsh or Mrs. Walsh. Which means you should not have accepted it.
On January 7th.
Even with that flawed agreement.
Can you ask it again, sir? I'm sorry.
Restate the question,
It was-
because I'm not
yeah.
following it. If I can't follow it,
Sorry about that.
having evidentiary value to me. So why don't we just try that again?
I'll be glad to, Judge. I don't think I can follow. My question to you is that based on what you had learned thus far up to January 7th, you had no knowledge that the iPad that you went to pick up on January 6th had been in fact used by Anna Walsh. Had you?
Are we talking about the iPad mini or the cracked iPad?
The iPad mini?
Well, we did have information from the oldest Walsh that she had manipulated that device.
Right, but you didn't have any other information other than, quote, the manipulation of the device.
At what time are we talking? In the morning of January 7th? Previous to Trooper Gurney calling me?
Let's start with yes. Yes.
No, I did not. No.
And you certainly didn't have any reason to believe that an iPad belonging to a 6-year-old would contain so-called location data or search history or anything like that, did you?
Location data, yes, it could include location data. There was no thought in my mind about search history at that time.
What location data on a
And you say
kid's
it could have
iPad?
location data in it, but you didn't have any specific information about any specific location data that might be in a 6-year-old child's iPad, did you?
No,
And you didn't have any information conveyed to you by anyone about another iPad described as a cracked iPad that you retrieved on January 6th also, correct?
correct.
In fact, when you went there, you weren't even expecting to pick up an iPad, a second iPad, were you?
Correct.
And it's fair to say, isn't it, that the Mass State Police utilizes body cams when they conduct searches, correct?
Yes,
You did so in this case, didn't you?
correct. So we use them until we secure the home, and then we usually deactivate them.
Why the fuck would you deactivate? Secure the home is, hey, everybody out. Now they're out. And then you turn it off? For fuck's sake. That, folks, is insanity. That is a cop or a bunch of cops who knows they are going to do something shitty and they want to get away with it. There's no reason to turn off the body cam after you secure the premises, and because it's getting the people out. Yeah, sure. Out you go. Fuck off. But then you have to document how the search is being done. And you turn the camera off? No. Just no.
And were you wearing a body cam on January 6th when you went to the house to pick up the items?
No,
And you are familiar with Massachusetts State Police consent to search forms, correct?
yes,
And you didn't use one or try to use one or attempt to fill one out before you took the items, the devices, for Mr. Walsh that day on January 6th, did you?
no, we were working together cooperatively to find Anna Walsh, and I was happy that we were working together.
No, but I understand your answer, but you didn't use a consent to search form.
There was already an agreement, so I think it wouldn't have made sense after just talking to Attorney Minor, talking to Sergeant Buchanan, an agreement in writing to then show up with a consent form. I think Attorney Minor would have had a problem with that.
Well, you think that, but my question is simple. You used those consent to search forms. You did not use one in this case.
That's correct.
And those consent to search forms, without belaboring the point, they're used to make sure that what you do, when it's looked at later on, that there's evidence that there was, in fact, a voluntary consent, and that whatever parameters of any search that was going to be conducted would be followed, and that the person giving consent understood that.
Yes.
Yeah. Even if there is an agreement between the attorney, Ms. Minor, and the assistant district attorney, That's the attorney's words. You still need the consent from the actual fucking owner. The attorney will help, but it still has to be signed off by the person whose home it is, whose devices it is. This case is pissing me off because we saw this in the Karen Reed case. We know it happened in the Sandra Birchmore case. How many more? And now it seems, fuck twat, you are letting a probable killer go. Now I don't know what the judge will decide here, but these are grounds for dismissal with prejudice, in my opinion.
That's all I have. Thank you, Judge.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lieutenant, you were asked a
All right,
question
back to
over
1.25.
concerning whether or not you had mentioned that the son might have used the iPad for the police report.
Yes.
Do you have a memory of that paragraph where you mentioned that you were asked about as far as the son using the iPad?
You guys are confusing me. I'm sorry. Do I have
We're right there with you.
do I have a memory of the paragraph? Is the one I just read?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what you mentioned as far as the son using the iPad in that report? Would the report help you out?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
That is so overly leading because he just said he didn't have an actual recollection.
I'm showing you the report, which has a number of 2003-112-4/116. I want you to take a look at the third paragraph, specifically the second sentence. Go to the third.
Got it.
All right, Lieutenant, did you write the report whether or not the son used the iPad?
I did.
Let me further wrong.
Any recall?
When did you write it? Yeah,
Step down.
2.5 fucking years later.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I can call my witness.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Commonwealth will call Connor